biggest thing where it resonates for us right now is that Molière was always pushing against the power structures of the time. Like he was known to be a real rabble rouser and a problem. He made problems for people, and it was the king who really supported and embraced his art, even though everybody else around him was like, take that guy down. He's causing a lot of problems. And the king was like, I think it's useful, because of course, if the more power around the king that got questioned, the more power the king had, So he was a fan, I think, and so in that sense, he's very much like speaking to real life. And the reason we keep doing these plays is because they're so universal, in the sense that we constantly come face to face with these ideas. The ideas of fear of sickness, of course, and mental health, and the dynamics between the medical institutions and people, real people in their lives, and how they navigate that. These are themes that are in there. But there's also just the very simple thing of facing death. Like, what is it to look death in the face and go, how do I navigate this fear that I have as a human? Just like Hamlet looking at Yorick, you're looking at death, and he's doing this in a way that's funny. He's saying, like, look at this fear that we all share. And so there's a real resonance with, every modern people and classic, people from long ago that we're all facing the same stories. We're all facing the same dilemmas. What's fun right now is that this play weirdly has some switched kind of realities in terms of the trust in science and the distrust in science. Back then, science, we look back and we're like, leeches, really? Or you're going to do that, and that's going to somehow, you're just going to take a lot of enemas and that'll clear up all your problems. And Molière was very, he was very doubtful about that science. And so, but we're in that conversation now, very much so, post-COVID, like, what is medicine, what's healthy, what's not, are vaccines useful? We are living in this moment in a way that I think we're probably closer now to the medical dilemmas of the past than we have been in a really long time. And so we're like, oh, wow, how do we we just hear it differently, We hear, oh, somebody's having issues with their doctor, or trusting science, or what is, it's all so much more alive. Even in terms of climate science, we're just constantly facing the question about science and what's legit, what's just a bunch of charlatan stuff. And, I think on both sides of the aisle, people are having all these conversations.
There's something so incredible about the neoclassical theater, that it's so economical. Like, each scene is so compact. There's really no kind of fat or extraneous dialogue or action in these scenes, other than the ballets, which you couldn't be more extraneous than how kind of sycophantic and wild these ballets are. And it's so interesting to get to play in Molière, where there's this very sophisticated social satire happening at the same time that the structure is based off of this classical commedia dell'arte kind of comedic archetypes. And there's this juxtaposition between something kind of simple in a certain way and something very ornate. And playing in that world, I think the part of that's so true to life is that's the structure, and then the core is that it's a comedy about death, really. And it's about death and hypocrisy and hypochondria, and kind of like Shakespeare's later half of his life. He's experimenting and changing forms, like The Tempest. The later plays are so bizarre, and the Hypochondriac is also like weird in terms of Molière's plays. Like, it's a prose play, which most of them aren't, and it's about something so morbid. And then he dies doing it, which is, something our production's very interested in. And I think that might be what rings true with people, is that there's this kind of, I don't know if it's a joke, but there's something about art reflecting life and life reflecting art in the moment that Molière died while performing a play about death, that I think, or I hope, the way we do it will resonate. So.
At Quintessence in particular, I love how they take older text and they reimagine it for the modern stage. And so I don't want to give too much away, but it's really a fun show. And Trey, who comes from, I think he's one of the founders of Pig Iron, he really brings a whole new level to it. So in terms of the physicality and the clowning, so it's kind of like watching partially like clowning with classical text. So I think it's going to be really fun for students to see how you can take an old sort of like, some folks think of it as like, oh, this is an old stuffy text, and it's just really ridiculous and silly, and you'll find yourself laughing.
I mean, and even Molière was an actor. He was on stage playing live with his collaborators, and so I just feel like it's all a part of the same line, you know. It's so easy for classics to feel like there's the classic play, and you must really bow to the beauty of the text, and I think that is important. But you also have to bring the actor to play. You have to bring the actor to have fun in that space, because otherwise you're not creating a living, breathing thing. You're just creating a museum piece, which is less useful.
This has been such a lovely homecoming, because I actually have not done an onstage performance by choice for the last 4 years. My last onstage performance was Mary Poppins here at Quintessence. So I sort of had to learn a new process for on-camera work, which I've been doing for the past 4 years, which is a very different world, because they already have it all built. And you're just stepping in and being like, is this okay? Am I doing what you guys want me to do? As opposed to here, you're a part of the creative process from day one, especially in a Trey Lyford room where the world is very much open to devising and clowning and playing like that. So I'm coming back with a very different process, and like, you know, taking some notes from what I was doing on camera, and you know, all of my training and everything. I do not come from the devising world. I do not come from the clowning world. And so this has been such an interesting experience, because so many people are coming from different worlds. So it's this lovely hodgepodge of different performance artists, basically, all in the same space. And then we're all kind of like making space for each other's process. Like for me, I love to like get all of the lines and all of my movement down like to a T. I could perform it almost like a robot over and over again, and then I let it breathe once I know what everything is. And some people are just like, I'm just going to keep doing whatever until I decide what I like, and then we'll get there at opening night. And that scares me so much. There are so many brave people in this room that are not me. So that process has been very interesting and very different for me, the devising the large movement pieces and stuff that are in this show. And I really do hope that the audience reads all of their emails so that they understand how ridiculous these movement pieces are that you will see in this play. They're bonkers, and they were bonkers. So we're not even straying that far from, we are using all of their lines. They're just bonkers, and we're just leaning into that.
Larger community, there's a huge pool of amazing actors, but there's also a huge pool of actors that may not fit into that traditional casting pool that gets put up in various, you know, shows and theaters around town, that are extremely talented, incredibly playful. There's a whole pool of like physical theater artists in town that I have a connection to, that I'm like, you guys should be on these stages. You should be playing. People need to see you, because not only are you a theater maker and deviser and creator, you are a person who can bring that creative spirit to text. And it's really fun to bring, you know, Quintessence regulars in kind of collaboration with other artists that aren't usually in these spaces, and seeing how those two learn. It's been really fun to see kind of more traditional musical theater artists or Shakespeare artists collide with these clowns and these kind of, and it makes total sense with Molière, because Molière was in residency with Italian commedia companies in Paris, and he was colliding and being inspired by and arguing with and getting drunk with these Italian artists, and how those clown worlds and those text worlds start to collide is like, it's happening right here in Philly. So they should come see it.
I'm delighted to be back in the room with a few of my Quintessence favorites and dear friends, Jared McClanagan and Eleni. I've worked with CPM before. And Jared and I and Trey were all doing One Man, Two Governors together here at Quintessence. And so I knew that I was in for a very wonderful, clowny, lotsy, like, commedia, sort of underneath everything vibes with this comedy. And which is part of the reason why I was like, yes, please pick me. So that, a lot of that dynamic feels similar, and I was prepared to come in with a bunch of ideas and a bunch of jokes because I know that Trey is so receptive to whatever the actors bring. And that's different people just have different styles, but he is so collaborative and so much like, yeah, try that, oh that's funny, oh that sucked. Actually, he's never said that sucked. He just will say things like, let's try a different offering or something really sweet like that. But so I knew that was kind of how he operated coming into this, and so I've been bringing all of my stupid ideas, and so has everyone else. However, this piece, also just because of the language, which as we mentioned is, per our last email, is bonkers, there's a lot more clowning. There's a lot more devised pieces. Because in One Man, Two Governors, there were these musical interludes, but they weren't full movement pieces all to honor and venerate the king in all his glory. So that process, especially those devising those movement pieces, is completely different. And I have not done anything like that since like workshops in college. So a little throwback to that with all of these clowns.
Our rehearsal process has been this kind of cauldron of different ways of working. We have people in devised theater, people from clowning, people from more traditional forms of theater like classical theater and musical theater. And so this production of The Hypochondriac is really this kind of stew of all these different ways of working, and it's made us in the rehearsal process challenge one another, and every day I think every single person in the process is stepping outside of their comfort zone and surprising themselves and surprising other people. So I think people will really take away from this production that it is completely surprising throughout the entire show. It's not you cannot predict where it's going, I don't think.
A, it's hilarious, and B, the ensemble is so strong because we've had to build this together. This, I almost said sinking ship, that's not true. This, this bonkers bananas piece.